Hello everybody, and it's us, Rowena and Asfar, and welcome to our MOxOR podcast. And that's podcast with a cough, because that is actually very topical, because that is what we'll be talking about this week. Why the cough? And we'll also be talking about the wider issue of why us. We touched upon this in our intro session about being Malay in Oxford and about being Malay in general and how that's central to our podcast and our conversations. And this is something that we have talked about a lot, about our identity, what it means to be Malay today, what it means to be a Malay in Malaysia, in Singapore, and in the United Kingdom. These are very important topics because it's something that is so divisive, especially in Malaysia. So I for me, on a personal level, it actually means a lot for me to talk about it more openly. So that's the main topic of our episode this week. We'll be looking at what it means to be a Malay, what it means to be a Malay in general in Oxford, and we'll touch a little bit about being Malay and Muslim, but that I think is a whole topic, and we discussed this as far. It's a whole topic on its own, because that is a big, I wanted to say bombshell, but that's probably not the best word. It's a really huge topic. So that's where that's what we'd like to discuss with you today. So why the cough? Why us? Really? Why the cough? Actually, that's a good start. Let's start with that.
I don't know, I just find that when Malays they become more Islamic, then they usually start using Arabic letters when they speak Malay or English. So the pronunciation, enunciation starts to
That's
become
so
different.
true.
Yeah, that is so true. So I said, why not?
That's so
We
true.
keep hearing
Yeah, exactly.
podcasts, and we are in the premise of being Orientalists and all. So why not put a cough
Yeah.
there? Why not? Why not put
Exactly.
a
No,
cough
no.
there?
I think it really works, and it's fascinating because I think that's a great place to start. Is the how Malay identity or Malay-ness has sort of adapted these Quranic or Arabic words and letters in just the most random places, and in a way, it's us. It's Malays trying to grapple or trying to engage with Arabness, which is not, it's not a bad thing. In a way, it's like a double Orientalism. It's
Yeah.
an Oriental people Orientalizing the Orient, and I think it's very fascinating because Orientalism is not just the West, having this idea what the Middle East is. It's also the Far East having this idea of what the Middle East is, because I remember
It has become its own
going to
ontology of the current
Sorry?
times, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, it has become its own
Yeah,
epistemology and ontology.
absolutely,
Right now, like whether we like it or not, Orientalism has become very
absolutely,
much prevalent.
absolutely.
Whether we like it or not, whether we are conscious of
Yeah,
it or not. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. You were talking about your trip to Lebanon.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and I think it's fascinating to sort of see this, and because you've lived in the Middle East, I study the Middle East, we both study the Middle East really, and you've actually lived there, and I think it's interesting when I go back to Malaysia, about when I talk to friends or relatives, their concept of the Middle East is very different from the one that I study, and quite different from the one I've traveled to as well, and I find that fascinating, this concept. Of especially Malays and what they think of the Middle East to be, or what they think Arabs to be. So you're right, the calf is very symbolic of this new trend, as it were. And you look at my name, for example, Razak, which is one of the 99 names of Allah, and how it's spelled. Let's just look at how it's spelled. Razak, simple. Someone today would spell that completely differently.
Yeah, actually, the
They'll
correct
put that
spelling
with two Zs
would
and a
be
Q.
yeah. The correct spelling would be with a 2Z, actually, with a 2Z and with a
Two
Q.
Zs, right?
Yeah, two Z with a
The
Q.
two Z's
Yeah,
with a Q. So
yeah,
I've basically got like a Malay version of it,
yeah.
of
You
Razak.
did. Yeah.
I've got a Malay version of it. which was the original way of was the original Malay way of spelling an Arabic word. But now there's been a reorienting to spelling it in the correct Arabic way. So a lot of people now have the RA, the double Z, and the A and the Q. And
Yeah.
that is how it should be spelled. I mean, if you transliterate Arabic, that's how it should look. But my name, Razak, with just a simple Z and the K, was what it was like then. But so it's
Even
very
my name
interesting
is
to see
not
that trend.
quintessentially Arabic name. It is Arabic,
No.
but it's not quintessentially culturally Arabic. It is more culturally Pakistani. I remember when I was in Cairo University, people were very, and I was the only non-Arab in my whole cohort. So people were very surprised and shocked to
God.
hear that I'm not Pakistani, because my name Asfar is actually more of a Pakistani name than even a Malay name at that time.
That's
in the
interesting.
past, yeah, because for
That's
Arabs, it's ridiculous to
That's
name
interesting.
someone Asfar, because the correct pronunciation would be Alfar. That's how difficult it is to pronounce the in Arabic, and when it doesn't roll off your tongue easily, then it's really not a good name. So like, Arabs usually name their children like Muhammad and Ahmad and
Yeah.
Abdurrahman. It just rolls off your tongue, right? Like Aisha, like, yeah. But Asfar is such a difficult. So I also got the Malay end of it, I suppose, with Asfar. You get what I mean? If the English, they would just call it Asfar,
Yeah, no, I
Asfar.
get that.
Yeah.
As for oh goodness, oh dear, but it's funny. You mentioned that people thought you were Pakistani because I've had emails. If I correspond with people via email, sometimes I've had this on more than one occasion. People ask if I'm Pakistani, and I don't know if that's the spelling of my Abdul Razak. I don't know, but I just find that quite interesting.
Well,
So,
we are
which brings
brown.
us back to the point of what it is to be a Malay. We are brown. We're the
Yeah.
right tone,
Yeah.
basically.
Actually, that's a good segue.
But I
Actually,
mean,
what does it mean to be
what
Malay?
is it?
You know? Yeah.
That's a very good segue. What is it to be Malay? Exactly. What is it? I mean, I it's difficult. So in Malaysia, being Malay is actually in the constitution. I think it's one of the few places. I'm sure one of the few places. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of the few places in this world where they actually tell you what a Malay is in the constitution. So a Malay must speak Malay, the language. It must practice Malay culture, I think, and be a Muslim. So, but it doesn't talk anything about where you were born, your ancestry, your bloodline. But as long as you fulfill these three criteria, then you are a Malay. Which, of course, in Malaysia has its own massive debates, which is also modeled in with the economy and politics. But so we'll get into that a little bit later. But so I find that quite interesting, and that's what Malaysia. I mean, what the Malaysian constitution defines.
I also
as
think
a
because
Malay.
there's a history behind that, isn't it? Like in the past, when someone says
There is a history
Masuk
behind that.
Melayu or Jadi Melayu, it basically means to become Muslim. So I mean, the Malay identity has gone through a lot of process of,
Yes,
based on our colonizers, whether it was the Hindus or the Arabs,
absolutely,
yeah, or whether it was
absolutely.
the Brits. Like we have gone through so much, change, and in the identification
Yes,
process. I was actually thinking about this the other
absolutely.
day, given the whole Black Lives Matter, protest, that's gone global.
Yeah.
You know, it's really not enough that I'm usually for the cultural identification. I don't think that ethnicity is enough, because when you
Yeah, it's not.
may be ethnically Malay but your culture is westernized, for example, or you're born and raised in the UK or Australia, and you don't even speak the language, you're not, let's not talk about religion, but you don't even know the culture anymore. So I don't know how you are any
Yeah.
more Malay. But at the same time,
Yeah.
because of the Black Lives Matter movement, I start to do a retake and say, maybe skin color plays a huge role, because that is the first thing that people see when you look at you. They don't care about your identification process. They don't care about your religion. They don't care about your culture. The first thing that they see is your brown skin. So even if you are,
Absolutely.
even if you are culturally Malay because you're in Malaysia or Indonesia, for example, right? But you don't look Malay, you don't get discriminated. You won't get the same type of discrimination. You won't be profiled the
Yeah.
same way. So, in a sense, your ethnicity does play a huge part.
It does.
And because it is the first thing that people identify you with, your skin color, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's also, I mean, that's, I think, also is seen in the media, because what we see is when we think of Asians in the media, we do not think of Malays. We think
Yeah.
of Chinese and Indians, because they are, quote unquote, the acceptable Asians in Western media. They're the ones that we can identify with. They're the ones that we can associate with Asia. But if you start to bring a Malay in, then it's it's very difficult. I mean,
not
the
a lot of
best
people
example
even
is
know. Yeah, not a lot of people even know what a Malay is, right? Even in Oxford, even in a place like Oxford.
Exactly.
And when I say I'm Singaporean, I every single day when I was in Oxford, when I say I'm Singaporean, they will be like, "Oh, but you're Malaysia." Even up till now, friends who've been, who I've known from Oxford, even up till now, they kept thinking that I'm Malaysian, because it doesn't come to, they couldn't believe that, there are actually
Exactly.
Malays in Singapore, because to them it's quintessentially, Chinese.
I mean, yeah, we can thank Crazy Rich Asians for that.
yeah.
The film.
We talk
That
about this.
had
Yeah.
that had no Malays or Indians for that matter. I've seen the film, and there were only Chinese people, and it's sorry, that's just wholly inaccurate. And it was seen as like a diverse film, like, oh look, we've got Asians in a Hollywood film or whatever it was. And
Yeah,
it's
there's
just all
there's
wrong.
barely
It's just all-
any representation of like Malay Asian in mainstream media. And I'm talking about mainstream media
No.
means Hollywood media, or media
No.
film in the UK. It's barely, even when there are films that are supposedly shot in Malaysia, where
Yeah.
but the majority are Malays, you would always find Chinese, ethnically Chinese actors playing the role of Malaysian,
Yeah.
even though that doesn't really statistically
True.
make sense. Just look at Netflix
No, it
and then
doesn't-
see
it-
any
it
Hollywood
doesn't-
films
it
that are
doesn't
supposedly shot in Malaysia. There's no Malays. And this is exactly what
There are no Malays. Yeah.
my friend Dr. Nazri Bahrawi wrote in his article. It's called Sham is Asia. He basically said
Oh,
that there's
I
an
love
erasure. Yeah, there's basically an erasure of like brownness in mainstream media, and he's absolutely correct.
There
Yeah.
is. There is, and I mean, it's only now that you get, say, Indian representation in mainstream media, but Malay we're just the wrong. It's a different. It's not wrong. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
not. It's just a different brownness that's being shown out there. Because think about statistically the numbers. There are many Malays out there.
Exactly.
Just,
I was about to bring this up. Like, it's not as if like Malays are in
Malaysians,
some small
Bruneians,
Pacific
they're
island,
massive.
right? Yeah. It's not as if like Malays
Yes.
are like in some small
Exactly, we're
Pacific
everywhere.
island. We are everywhere. Basically.
And I think you've touched on that already about
Yeah.
and you're right, we're a huge number, but if you come to Oxford, it's very rare.
Yeah.
And
But if you go to Oxford Street, you have a lot of Malays there.
oh, they're exactly shopping, and they are easy to pick out. With their
If you go
with
to
their
Oxford
beanie,
Street,
the
there
beanie
are-
instead of the
Exactly.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, I love this.
the beanie instead of the tudong.
The beanies and the puffer
It's
jacket.
the backpack,
And the backpacks.
the
and
puffer
the
jacket,
gloves.
and the backpack.
And the gloves, yeah. You will
Exactly,
always
and
find
the
a
jeans and
Malay.
the tight jeans.
Yeah, you will always find a Malay in Oxford
Wait,
Street,
I've seen you.
but you barely find a Malay in Oxford. And that's a good segue to
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is difficult. Also, I mean, weirdly, being Malaysian as well. And in Malaysia, we're I think 60% Malay. I guess. I don't know the statistics, but it's a fairly
God,
it's
you're
a fairly
horrible.
high amount. But even
Yeah.
then, like being Yeah, we're also very quite rare, and even then in the humanities, there are very few Malays. And I remember, so my father also graduated from Oxford. He has a DPhil in Oxford from the Politics and IR department. And one of the things they said to him when he started was, "Oh, you're a Malay in Oxford? Better finish, because not many Malays finish in Oxford." And I was shocked to hear that. I remember, so we also have, not only are we a minority, but we also have a pretty bad reputation, apparently, you know?
Some don't even
And
start.
it
Some Malays don't even
some
start.
don't even start. And shall
Who's
we
that?
mention those who don't even
Who's
start?
that young minister? What's his name?
Exactly.
Then Minister Syed Saddiq, right?
Side CD. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I mean, what was that about? You know, I'm sorry. Like, oh, he received an offer, and I would have been
He
happy.
received
It would have
an
been great
off.
for him to
He
get
received
two
offers
offers. No.
twice and rejected twice because of his love for his
What was the
country.
point?
But I'm like, so
That's
why did you
rubbish. I'm
even
sorry.
apply? Why did you even apply twice? You
Yeah. What is
basically
the point of that?
taken the
And
opportunity
also,
from someone else, which is really kind of selfish, actually.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's true, super, definitely. I mean, let's think about it. Like, okay, you want to make a statement, but that statement comes at a cost of people.
exactly.
Oxford places are really hard to get. Just don't apply if you're not going to go for it. I mean, it's just a really stupid statement to make. And I
Yeah.
think it's quite disrespectful for people like you and me who actually want to get this Oxford education. I mean, let's admit it,
Yeah.
it is prestigious.
Let's
to have this opportunity to be there.
Yeah, let's share a little bit of how difficult it is to get into it.
It is.
First of all, you need some sort of privilege, whether you like it or not. You need some sort of privilege because
Yeah,
it is very expensive to
is.
even apply. It is very expensive to even consider to apply. To just the
Yeah.
application may cost you up to like 150 to 200 pounds. That's almost like 400 Singapore dollars. That's a lot of money that people don't have, lying around, and that's not
Yeah.
inclusive of the cost that it would take, for you to send all your documents, and because these are important documents, you will have to FedEx them, and then the upfront
Yeah.
fees and all of that. This is like no small amount of money, So you have
No.
you need to have a sort of privilege. So for
You're
someone
absolutely
to
right.
just simply, apply just to make a statement, not to mention taking an opportunity from someone else, is really very selfish. I love how
Very.
nobody cared about that when they were reporting it in the media. But I'm like, yeah, but it's extremely selfish of him.
Yeah, but I understand. I mean, it is difficult. I mean, on that matter, on that subject, it is very difficult to get in. And then once you get a place, you're always questioned. Are you good enough to be here?
Oh,
Do
the
you think you're good
inferiority
enough to be
complex.
here?
Yeah, the imposter syndrome is a daily,
In the imposter syndrome,
on a daily basis.
and then
yeah.
on top of being, absolutely, and on top of being a minority, a very specific minority. I mean, it's complex and difficult. The Malays you do have in Oxford, we have this one guy in theology, I think. I forgot his name now. And he was a Malay there, and they're like unicorns.
Was it our current mufti?
And yes,
Is it my current Singapore's current mufti?
you know,
He
and
went
and
to-
they're
he
so
went there to do theology and religion.
no, not him.
Oh, okay.
Not him. He's Malaysian. I forgot his name. He's actually teaching it in Oxford. Anyway, but the whole point is just that we're like unicorns and we also, I think, have to play a role. If you're a Malay in Oxford, you have to be a certain way. You have to be quite quiet, quite meek, quite not don't challenge too much. That's what I noticed, because I had a Viva and it was horrendous.
Tell
And
tell
in the
tell
Viva,
them
and
what.
my Viva, I'm gonna say this because I was so shocked. I was in my Viva and I was having this, my thesis is on British policy, the role of the Tudeh Party of Iran in British policy, very bog standard. And my examiner suddenly asks me, tells me you need to have more Malaysian flavor. I mean, we do have amazing food. I'm not gonna.
Is it like
I don't
rendang?
blame him too much. Like a rendang, and I was just sat there thinking, what do you mean by that? Why do I need to have Malaysian flavor? in my thesis on Iran, you know? So this is the whole idea, and that's and then it dawned on me in the middle of my Viva that wow, I feel really sidelined at this moment, and this is what it's like to be a Malay in Oxford. Here I am, challenging a British perspective on Iran, and here I am being slapped back with, oh, it's not Malaysian enough. And it just didn't make any sense to me. Anyway, it's a horrible Viva, and I unfortunately have to resubmit my thesis, which is fine. But it really just made me feel very, very exposed and vulnerable, because I thought that I was, okay, but I never felt it until that point. And then I realized, then I looked back, I did a retrospective of my time in Oxford, how exposed I've always been as a Malay in Oxford. Not being the Malay that people think or people want, but being a different kind of Malay. And it was difficult. It was difficult.
Yeah.
It was difficult among Malaysians. It was difficult in the Malaysian society at Oxford, because I was also not the typical Malay. Not the one. I don't wear a headscarf. I don't do science. I'm actually quite vocal. I am how I am, but I didn't fit into this box of being a Malay in Oxford.
They do expect us to be demure and soft spoken.
Exactly.
And not really assertive.
And that's what I've always gotten.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always gotten.
That was a huge culture shock for me, because like prior to Oxford, I've never had any non-Muslim friends. I've never been exposed to like European culture physically, right?
Yeah.
Like Oxford was basically the first, rather the UK was the first European country that I've been to. Prior to Oxford, I've been to all over the Middle East, but not really Europe. So yeah, that was the first thing that I realized, that these white people, especially Americans, they're very loud, very opinionated, very assertive. There's so much confidence, even though they have nothing actually worthwhile to say. Like when you scrutinize,
but
when
they
you
have
actually
confidence. I mean, I
scrutinize
gotta admire that American confidence.
in the classroom setting, or in seminars and conferences, when they speak, there's so much confidence because of that privilege that they have, right? But when you actually scrutinize what they're saying, it's rubbish. Like, what are you even talking about? You're not making any sense at all. I mean, being Malay in Oxford is tough. Not to mention that Oxford is tough. Like, I remember my first week, every single day I was crying because of the sheer amount of workload. I've never done academic English prior to Oxford. The only academic language that I've been exposed to was Arabic, and then that was the first time ever.
I mean,
gosh, that was crazy.
Amazing.
And then even when I became president and I gained a little bit of confidence, and thought to myself, I might be doing this whole Oxford thing quite well. And then you have a fellow compatriot Chinese Singaporean coming up to me and then say, oh wow, you're doing a good job and all. But then I found out that they all thought that all the Chinese Singaporeans there thought that I was a Johor royalty, and not a Singaporean. And when I said no, I'm not a Johor royalty, I come from Pasir Ris. I come from Pasir Ris. I don't come from Johor royalty. And then they were shocked. And then what they said afterwards, really shocked me, because they said that, oh wow, for a Malay you've done quite well. But I'm like, what does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah, is a Malay not supposed to do well? Is a Malay not supposed to do well? Am I supposed to be blue-blooded? Then I can be doing amazing things. Like I'm supposed to have that kind of privilege, royalty privilege. Then I'm supposed to do extraordinary things. But like if I'm just an average Singaporean living in Pasir Ris, right? Like I'm supposed to be at the bottom of the food chain. But there's an educated Singaporean, saying that, making that statement. And that's what it basically, in a nutshell, that's what being Malay in Oxford is. You're never good enough.
Yeah.
To people, you're never good enough, and you feel that you are never good enough.
You're never good enough, and you have to fit into a particular role. The demure, the meek, the I'm very very quiet, friendly, helpful. If you're not any of those things, then you're something that I can't deal with. And partly I blame colonialism because because the British, when they ruled Britain, India, and all of these places, they liked neat little boxes that could work well in bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And so those little boxes remained.
Yeah.
And the stereotypes attached to the races remained, and they've remained among the races, and they've remained from when British people look at Malays and when non-Malays look at Malays. Those are the things that have remained, whether in the Singaporean context or the Malaysian context. And it's very difficult. So if you're a little bit different, if you're not quite,
you don't fit the box, you don't fit the mold,
if you don't fit
there's
the
something
box,
wrong with you.
And yeah, exactly. And I've always said that, look, what's in the box, I fit what's in that box, but my box is just a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I've always sort of portrayed it.
And also, Ro, it's not just about being Malay, fitting the box in Oxford, right? It's about you're not being Malay enough back home. So you're not good enough in Oxford. But then because you are representing, because of this, privilege that you have, Oxford, because it's such a huge opportunity. So a lot of people back home are very proud of you. At the same time, at home, people think that you're not meeting the expectation. You're not Malay enough. You're not Muslim enough.
You're not Malay enough. And if you look at other Malays looking at us, then we're not Malay enough. Or again, it's very complex. And I think looking at Malay-ness in Malaysia and Singapore, I think this is a topic that we can't confine to one podcast or podcast.
Not even a book.
Because
like,
we can write a book about this. But I think this is something that would like to talk about a little bit more in the following sessions. So, this week we've talked a little bit about what it's like to be Malay in Oxford and a bit about what it's like to be Malay in general. But this is definitely an ongoing topic. Because it's something that we have to deal with our everyday lives, whether it's lack of representation in the media, whether it's, just going out every day and having, just going out on the street and sort of being a bit different, even within our own race, we're different. And I find that really interesting, and it's something that's always evolving. And I think that's the beauty of identity and race, is that we're always evolving. And you're right. I mean, the whole Black Lives Matter has made me also sort of rethink the color of my skin. It's not just how I am, but it's also the color of my skin, and what people see, and they see what they want to see. They don't see the struggles I've had or the struggles we've had, but they just see what they want to see. And we've also, I like how we talked about, and I like how we brought in colonialism, because that's a must in any kind of podcast about race.
That should be the first thing that we mention.
Absolutely, it's colonialism. We've got to bring that in. And so I think we'll end this episode with these little thoughts about race and ethnicity, language, identity, and hopefully this will give us all something to think about. And I think if you've gotten the gist of our podcast, it's really you're eavesdropping on a conversation between MOxOR and I. One of the many, many conversations that we've had. And that was the whole idea as well. It was just to get you to listen in to what we have to talk about, to listen to our musings, our thought processes, and, share in that. And it's nice that we have a bit of an audience now, and it's nice that we have people who can make their own comments and make their own contributions as well. So on that note, I think we'll leave it here. And as
we decided on a different ending this time around.
Yes.
We're gonna
in
say
pure Orientalist style.
Yes, and spirit.
In the pure Orientalist spirit, and we're basically Orientals orientalizing the Orient.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That's true.
I know, it's a complete alliteration.
So we're gonna say in Farsi, Khoda Hafiz, everyone. Thank you very much, and see you next week.
Khoda Hafiz, everyone.
Khoda Hafiz.
Yeah, see you next week. Bye.